Hello, world. Welcome to the Breakout Finder podcast. I'm your host, Nate Liss. You can find me on Twitter at @AnOutrageJew. And with me, as always, is Mr. Ryan Lopes. You can find him on Twitter at StillRyan5. And back with us again, and the first time this season, is Mr. Brad Ziegler. You can find him on Twitter at Brad Ziegler. Brad, welcome back. Technical difficulties are not an issue this time. We just resolved the one singular problem we thought we were going to have. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well, and just to clarify for everybody, the one singular problem we thought we were going to have is Nate not pressing enough buttons before the record. So it has nothing to do with Brad. Actual technical issues. It's just user error.
Listen, Brad, I have a question for you. So I am a longtime Oakland Athletics fan. So again, tip of the cap to you, sir. Tell me, were you happy that the Houston Astros did not get to the World Series? I have to hear this from a former Major League Baseball player. Please tell me what was going through your head when they were in Game 7 and there was a chance that after the 2019 season that we saw from them, they could actually make it to the World Series.
Yeah, I think it was good for the game because people were, the majority of people were just upset that the players weren't punished in any way. And that at least made it to where, the Astros went through this, especially the playoffs, with a chip on their shoulder. You could see it. Like there was an edge that they felt like it was kind of a us against the world kind of thing. And they to almost come back from a 3-0 deficit, like you just kind of felt like, man, if they win that, it's potentially their destiny. And no one wanted to see that outside of Houston. So at the same time, I played enough years in Arizona to be extremely upset that the Dodgers made it. And so I am a hardcore Tampa Bay fan right now for about the next week.
Nice. Yeah, nice. I got to be honest with you, man. I was watching that game, and I didn't want the Astros to win because, again, as an A's fan, when the Astros moved from the NL to the AL West, I was sick to my stomach. I'm like, oh, God, this is, because the A's are always a 500 ball club. They hang around. They're a wild card team. And then the Astros just turned into this monster team, and I didn't want them to win. I did not, everything in my heart, I did not want them to win. And did you watch Game 7?
Not the whole thing. I saw probably from like the 6th inning on.
Okay.
So all the drama and stuff, I'm to the point now I do so much with my kids during the day that like I can't just sit and watch a 3-hour baseball game in the middle of football season. Right. Like I'm fortunate my wife gives me the Chiefs games and Red Zone channel on Sundays. Mm-hmm. I don't want to push it too far during the week.
Yeah,
so
I don't.
I wanted to catch a little bit here and there, and I used the little picture-in-picture. Nice. To we're sitting there watching the Blacklist or something, and I'll have it popped up where I can at least see the score and
love it.
Somewhat pay attention, but also It's not the same as it was when I was playing. Like when I was playing, I watched so much baseball. Like it was on in the locker room every day. And, even on the days I wasn't playing, if we had a day off, like you catch a game on MLB Network or something here and there. And it was just, I always wanted to have as much information as I could about the guys I was going against. And Once I got done, I was like, you know what? I just need some time away. And I've probably seen a total of 10 baseball games in the last 2 years.
Wow.
And I don't know that any of them were front to back. Like it'd be like, a few innings here and there, turn it off, and then maybe come back to it at the end and see what happened. And I will say at the end of last World Series, when the Nationals won it, I had so many former teammates on the Nationals. My two best friends in the game were Patrick Corbin and Daniel Hudson, and they were the last two pitchers the Nationals threw in Game 7. So like I had a vested interest in pulling for those guys, and so I watched a lot more of that series than I have anything else since then.
Yeah, it's well, you didn't miss much. I'm just glad the Astros didn't win. And I'm glad you didn't waste your time. So that's good, man. Listen, I don't want to waste any more of your time. People are like, why the hell are they talking about baseball? Listen, I don't know any other professional baseball players, all right? Anytime I get a chance to ask Brad these questions.
This is cool stuff, absolutely.
Yeah, I've texted him some stuff in the past. I've texted him things about catchers not running up to rescue a pitcher. I'm like, what the hell does this mean? Brad's the only guy I know that can answer these questions. So, and Brad, listen.
And I also have given you, in fairness, a lot. I'll pub your other podcast stuff here, but a little bit of trading card knowledge too that I've passed along, and because big time hobby of mine too. So I'm glad you're jumping on the boat.
Well, I mean, you've opened the doors now. We have to talk about this for a minute. Listen, so you're into
Nate was waiting for you to just alley-oop this.
Yeah.
That's all he wants to do is talk cards.
This is perfect. So listen, I've been buying cards weekly at this point. Like I found myself super immersed in it. I'm trying to find values in cards. How long have you been collecting?
I mean, I collected some as a kid and then, took a long break. And then once I got into pro ball, even in the minor leagues, I started trying to buy cards of guys I had played with, college teammates, summer ball teammates in college, like from the Cape Cod League or whatever. And then I took another break. And in 2011, I opened a pack of triple threads, a top set, and I pulled out a Babe Ruth bat relic card.
Oh.
Like it's just, it's got a slice of a game used bat of Babe Ruth. And I absolutely got the fever at that point. Like I was holding a piece of Babe Ruth bat. And fortunately I was able to last a while in the big leagues and make a little bit of money to where I was able to expand my collection a little bit. And so I would say since 2011, so probably, my 10th year of really going after it. But at the same time now I'm very content with what I have, and I primarily collect bat knobs, bat barrels, autographs, and jersey pieces of only Hall of Famers.
Okay.
And so I have a very exclusive, group of cards I'm going after, and I don't try to get, 5 Derek Jeter bat knobs. Like if I got one, I'm good with Derek Jeter. I just cross them off my list, and so at that point, I'm kind of to the point now where it's really rare that something pops up that I actually need for my PC. But one happened the other day, a Tony Lazzeri bat knob, teammate of Ruth's on the Murderers Row Yankees team, and it's the only bat knob of him that was ever made, and so I put in a huge bid and won it for way less than what I bid. And so I was pretty pumped that I still had a little money left over.
Yeah, that always bends my mind. I get on eBay and I see some of these bids. I actually looked at some of the sales transactions last week, and last week a Kobe Bryant gem mint, so a PSA 10 rookie card went for $99,000 in an eBay auction. I was just like, oh my God. It's so crazy, and I know there's people out there that think that this is insane. I think what you're talking about, similar to what they do with the jerseys, with the RPAs, the rookie patch auto, is really cool. The bat knob thing, I don't even know anything about it. I know we've talked about the Hack Wilson thing and stuff, but like the whole bat knob thing is so like out of this world for me. I don't even know where to begin, because that's also, that's an exclusive set of cards that you're working your way into. But I need to look into those more. I need to expand my card collecting beyond football. I mean, you collect NBA at all, or is it mostly baseball?
Mostly baseball. I've got a few. I bought at an amazing time, and it wasn't the best time, but I bought a big giant stack of Patrick Mahomes rookie cards right before the playoffs last year. And so, yes, they had advanced some because he'd already won an MVP, and the Chiefs were a good team last year too. But with every single win that he had, like they beat the Texans, then they beat the Titans, and then they won the Super Bowl, the cards just kept going up and up and up. And I was like, gosh, I'm glad I bought when I did, because I wouldn't have been able to buy as many, with the same amount of money if I waited till after the Super Bowl. And now they're literally less than a year later, they're like 10 times what I paid for them.
Wow.
And it's to the point where my wife's like, sell them. Like,
yeah,
at some point you feel like this market's going to fall out. But, it surprised me how much it went up during the pandemic, because you hear about, a lot of people, losing jobs and that kind of stuff. And I try to be very sympathetic to people's plight with that. And at the same time, someone was going out and spending obscene amounts of money on cards, and it's just continued since then. And it surprised me that, even in a potential down economy, that the cards were still doing well, because, back in 2008 or so, there was kind of a little bit of a market correction where, the market dropped quite a bit and baseball cards tanked. I mean, memorabilia tanked, like the whole market just collapsed, and that didn't happen this time. So, maybe people looked at it as a way to diversify their portfolio, and and invest in it instead of just buying for, display purposes.
That's right. I think there's a lot more to this, and I'm going to talk about this more on other podcasts. I'm sure Ryan's like, good God, can we get to football? So we talked about Patrick Mahomes, but let's talk about a teammate of Patrick Mahomes, Brad. You live in Kansas, right? Where do you live? Kansas? Okay. So,
yeah, suburbs of Kansas City.
Nice. So you're a huge fan of this team. I mean, you experienced a Super Bowl victory, nearly 2, MVP for your quarterback. And then they go out this year, and in the first round, they draft Clyde Edwards Helaire. Okay, and there's been so many different versions of people's opinions of this guy, that he stinks, that he's great, give him time, he's a bust. Brad, we watched him play just the other night, and he melted faces. So please, this is your chance. Bring on the Clyde Edwards Helaire, victory laps. Go ahead. I'm rolling out the red carpet.
Sure. So obviously I'm a big believer like you were. And I hear, when you hear all the quotes about what Reed liked about him when he watched him on tape, they haven't done any of that. They haven't used him as a pass catching weapon other than like swing passes or checkdowns. And I'm still waiting for the time where they line him up in the slot and have him run angle routes out of the backfield. And he hasn't done, literally none of that. And that's supposed to be what he's the best at. And so I still think there's a whole lot more to unlock. But there was, when they signed Lev Bell, everybody had all these questions about, this is a sign that they don't trust Edwards Helaire. And everything around here was, no, it's actually more that they just like Bell over Darrell Williams and Darwin Thompson. And for $1 million, like it's hard to argue with that. Like, it didn't crush their cap or anything like that. So he's obviously better than those guys. And he is a bigger version of Clyde Edwards Helaire. They're both incredible pass catchers, great route runners out of the backfield. But there are things that Edwards Helaire has struggled with, specifically picking up pass protection when he's been in the backfield, to the point where when they're running a third down play or a 2-minute offense, it's been Darrell Williams in there because he's a better pass protector. And that's something that I think they feel like Lev can teach Edwards Helaire. And with that being the case, then he goes out and just destroys the Bills defense on a wet field, like to the point where they knew the run was coming and they still couldn't stop him from getting 7 or 8 yards of carry. And the biggest thing I saw was there were instant O-line changes from the moment the Chiefs went on the field last night. They had a new, and I'll apologize. I don't know like who actually was different, but I know it was not their normal starting 5. And then like 5 plays into the game, Mitchell Schwartz, their right guard, got hurt. And so then they had a backup come in, and their O-line was just monstrous last night. It just opening up holes and, giving him a lot of room to work in space, which is where he succeeded. And I think too, he was kind of running with something to prove last night and saying like, look, I know, Lev's on his way here and he's going to make our team better, but this is my backfield. And he was hitting the hole hard and getting downfield and making guys miss. And to the point where like I was wondering if when we got on this podcast tonight, if Nate wouldn't go all Jeffrey Tubin on us and start, make the Zoom call inappropriate really quick.
And I'm always very careful with a few subjects, but Clyde Edwards Helaire is definitely one of them, because at any given moment you say the right or wrong thing and Nate is all sorts of different excited, and Jonathan Taylor comes up and we're cursing this person, but again, right now I think you guys are certainly in the right. What we saw last night, I do a quick hour spot with Kelly on Fridays, the Propcast, man, and one of the props that I talked about was just this Chiefs Bills game. There's supposed to be a ton of points. Obviously, the weather impacted that a little bit, but my big takeaway was this was going to be a big CEH game because of the Bell signing. This was going to be Reed's chance to just throw him out there, give him a lot more, let him handle a lot more, let him, build some confidence, knowing that despite we got this new guy who certainly has a strong resume, you still are someone that we want to lean on. And we saw that last night. Again, 26 carries, 161 yards, over 6 yards, a tout. Didn't get in the end zone. There was definitely a couple opportunities that, definitely frustrating for fantasy owners there. But the change that Brad was speaking about was Daniel Kilgore at center, which made all the difference in the world. And you can tell, Buffalo is certainly no pushover on defense, and the Chiefs offensive line just looked so much different last night. The holes that weren't there before for Clyde. And again, I don't think Clyde Edwards Helaire has naturally set the world on fire through the first couple weeks here. But at the same time, I'm not sure all that is inherently his fault either. The offensive line just hasn't been up to snuff. But last night, we saw this line just getting a ton of push. Linemen were downfield blocking me, and you saw the result. Edwards Helaire was able to look like LSU. Clyde Edwards Helaire. So definitely exciting stuff. And I'm sure the pitch job to Bell was, come here, probably make another run at this thing, get that resume back up, and then either, find yourself back here or go get paid again somewhere else. So I think for Bell, it was a smart business decision. Reed gravitates towards running backs, certainly pass catching backs. So I think it was a beautiful fit in that regard. And people can spin it however they want as far as, how much impact has Edwards Helaire had versus where he was being drafted. I understand that frustration, but I think the big takeaway was that largely a lot of Edwards Helaire performance has been overblown, as well as the Bell signing. But that's just kind of the nature of what we do. And whenever a big headline mover like this happens, there's going to be reactions and largely a lot of overreactions.
Look, man, I think that there's a lot of people that are really, really bad at this. I'm just going to say it. I think there's a lot of people that are really, really bad at this.
I wasn't going to be that blunt about things.
We need to be. Here's the thing. So I got a multitude of responses from the genuine individuals on Twitter last night as I went out there and just tried to skewer everybody that ever said anything bad about Clyde Edwards.
Your timeline was messy.
So first off, people don't want to acknowledge the fact that thus far in Clyde Edwards' season, he's faced 3 teams that are ranked in the top 6 against running backs in fantasy points per game. So he's already faced 3 of the toughest defenses in Baltimore, New England, and the Chargers. Okay, so it's not like he's had the simplest schedule to this point. Look, Houston's been terrible. The Raiders haven't been great against the run. Buffalo's been decent, but he trashed them. The thing that continues to get thrown around about Clyde Edwards Helaire, which is hysterical, is that he doesn't see extra defenders or 8+ defenders in the box, and everybody likes to bring up the next-gen stats. Here's the thing. Are we supposed to covet the player that sees more loaded boxes because he works his way out of them that's more impressive than the running back that's going to see less? It shouldn't be a shock for people. They think that this magically happened because it's Clyde Edwards. But if you go back in time, ever since Patrick Mahomes has been with KC and Andy Reid, they've done this. Damian Williams last year only had 11% of the time seeing 8+ defenders. Even back to 2018 with Kareem Hunt, it was only 15% of the time. I don't remember anybody bringing this narrative up in the past. Nobody brought it up, but this secret sauce has always been in the mix. This isn't some new information. This is what they do. Patrick Mahomes forces defenses to play different, and Andy Reid turns it into run situations against light fronts. Too bad. I don't feel bad. Like, Clyde Edwards Helaire is getting better rushing opportunities because defenses have to play it different. And I understand everybody brings up Jonathan Taylor always facing loaded boxes 27% of the time. Well, that's because Phillip Rivers' fucking arm is dead. Okay? And that offensive line isn't getting as much push as they thought it was going to. And I appreciate Jonathan Taylor, but are we supposed to like him more because he has to struggle more? I don't understand. Like, there seems to be a huge divide in the fantasy world, and people are overlooking it. It's like the contested catch theory. People are like, oh, this guy, he's so great at contested catches. Well, maybe that's because he never gets open, right? Like, I think that's the way I'm looking at these two things. We're throwing it back in his face that the fronts are lighter, but isn't that a good thing? Am I wrong here, Brad?
No, I mean, I completely agree. That's part of what you like is he's going to Patrick Mahomes' offense. That's why you liked him so much in the first place. Yes, Andy Reid can get a lot out of him, but Mahomes is the one going to the line and checking to a run if he needs to or whatever. He sees what kind of front they're bringing, what blitz they might be bringing. He's daring teams. He's like, look, we'll run the ball on you all night until you start putting more guys in the box, and then we'll throw it over the top of you. And they didn't have to do it last night. But you just know they can at any moment, and the other team knows that. And so they just refuse to put more guys in the box. And I think that as the season goes along, especially, they've got to get Sammy Watkins back. When they get Sammy Watkins back, even not necessarily, he's obviously not an incredible fantasy asset, but he is so important to that team because he's really the only guy that can play the X receiver on their team. There are other guys that X receiver are, Demarcus Robinson, Byron Pringle. It's not McCole Hardman. I know we're going to talk about him in a second, but that's not his role. Like, he's not big enough, strong enough to be that guy to get off the line against press coverage. And Watkins is also an incredible blocker. And it's extremely underrated until you see it on a week in, week out basis. And they love running to his side. You know, they're not going to run and let Tyreek Hill block, you know, be a lead blocker on a swing or, you know, a toss play or anything, but they'll do it to Watkins' side all day long. Mm-hmm. And it just, when he comes back in a couple weeks, I think it just, you know, it just opens everything up that much more.
And I think, I mean, and Brad kind of alluded to it. It's, you know, we always joke about, you know, fantasy doesn't have to be hard. I still am going to gravitate towards the back that has first round draft capital and is going to be attached to Patrick Mahomes for the foreseeable future. Again, Le'Veon Bell can come in, and again, we're going to talk about him in a second here as well. And he can come in and look like Le'Veon Bell. I highly doubt we're going to get, you know, Pittsburgh Le'Veon Bell, but he can still be an impact player. At the end of the day, Edwards Helaire is the young gun with the draft capital. And again, someone that's going to see Patrick Mahomes through his contract and, you know, feasibly, you know, him and Andy Reid tethered together. It just doesn't make sense to jump ship so early as maybe many people, some people that I think Nate might be kind of alluding to here.
I mean, look at this. Here's the thing. Okay, they're bringing in Lev Bell. We don't know to what extent Bell is going to have a role in this offense. I would assume it's absolutely goal line at minimum. But you look at Clyde Edwards' pace this year. Clyde Edwards is on pace for 284 carries and 80 targets. That is not what some people expected at the beginning of the year. That's more than Alvin Kamara ever saw. I mean, that's more than Austin Eckler ever saw. So his usage in this offense, and he's been durable thus far, has been more than people expected. And I think that people are nitpicking. I got these responses the other night on Twitter too. This is, Brad, this is my absolute favorite. This is the absolute fucking cherry on top of the game. When somebody goes, "Oh yeah, well, so-and-so running back would have ran for 287 yards in that game." And you're like, come on.
Sure.
You're like,
yeah, totally.
Right? Like, this is, you can't even validate that statement. Like, it's just such a chip in. I don't understand it myself. But I think people have dug their heels in so deep at this point and nobody's budging. And again, because I got a lot of this stuff on Twitter, I love Jonathan Taylor. He's great, okay? I thought he was the second best back of the group. And I know people don't want to hear that continuously, but please leave my mentions alone, okay? Just because I'm talking about Clyde Edwards doesn't mean I'm taking a crap on Jonathan Taylor, but I do like to push your buttons. So, Brad.
And I mean, at this point too, like what other rookie running back has been good besides James Robinson? Like, there really hasn't been a whole lot out there. And I think, you know, you talk about the abbreviated training camp and stuff, like it's taken these guys a little bit to get acclimated to the speed of the game and all the different, you know, in college, there's not a lot of these guys that had to do any pass blocking. Like, they had other guys for that, you know, most of the time. You know, for Jonathan Taylor, he's at Wisconsin. Their offensive line did not need help pass blocking, and so he was, you know, able to do other stuff. But it's just they're having to learn a whole lot more than and you know, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. I love when people are jumping ship on rookies 6 weeks into the season, because I will go and gobble them up. And you know, we trust like the long-term process. Like, I'm not looking. You know, we'll talk about Laviska Shenault later. Like, he has one bad game and everybody just starts falling off the face of the earth. And it's like, look, like, if you don't want him, I'll take him. You know, I'll be glad to grab him, because I know at some point he's going to be really good. And it's probably when Josh Fields is his quarterback next year.
So Brad, okay, we talked about Bell a little bit. What do you think his realistic role is in this offense?
I can see him getting a 30 to 40% snap share pretty easily. I mean, Edwards Helaire is getting a 55 to 60% snap share right now. It might have been a little higher after last night, but that's what it was going into last night. And Darrell Williams and Darwin Thompson were getting the rest of it. And so there's an opportunity there just as a second running back for a lot of volume. And if he's, you know, they were not using Edwards Helaire in the 2-minute drill. They haven't still to this point. It's always been Darrell Williams. There's no question to me that's going to be Lev Bell. He's going to be the guy who, when they're going up and down the field, you know, trying to score before the end of a half, it's going to be him on the field. And you know, and you mentioned the goal lines. Like, there is definitely going to be some fantasy relevance for Lev Bell, because I think he's going to have a decent amount of targets and he's going to get the goal line carries most likely. And I don't think, it's not that I don't think CEH can do it. The goal line opportunities he's gotten this year so far have been blocked just so atrociously. And the last 2 games, he's had touchdowns called back for holding calls. And you know, of course, last night they throw it to Kelsey instead of giving it back to him. But he ran it in from the 6-yard line, and, you know, the holding call changed everything. And so it's, at some point, he's going to get those opportunities. He's going to regress. And when he has a game where he goes out and gets 3 touchdowns, all of a sudden everything's going to kind of settle back into where it should be. And you just feel like it could happen at any moment with this offense.
Yeah.
I won't.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
No, you take it, Nato.
No, I was gonna say that's exactly how I feel with the touchdowns. I mean, you can go back to week 1 with the Texans, right? He was getting blown up behind the line of scrimmage. That was the game that everybody wanted to talk about. 6 attempts from the goal line, 0 scores. But if you look deeper, he was being hit at the line of scrimmage or behind it. He was averaging like a negative 2 yards of opportunity afforded every time the ball was put in his hands. So it's just crazy.
Well, and also that the whole game he was having success running over the left guard. Kelechi Osemele was a monster the whole game, and then they get to the goal line and they're running right, and they're running to the weaker side of the run blocking line right toward JJ Watt for some reason, and it just didn't make any sense because they were having all the success over there. Now Osemele's hurt, probably out for the year, and they bring in a new left guard and they're running left again last night. Like 3/4 of the runs felt like they were going left side last night and just completely dominating. And so at some point, you'd like to think that they zoom out, they realize this is an issue when they're trying to run in short yard situations on the right side, and they just stop doing it and take what gives you success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Only thing I was going to add to the Le'Veon Bell conversation is, again, I think I would lean on Brad's kind of split as far as snap share and all that, and kind of how the Chiefs are going to utilize Bell. But what's interesting, it goes back to just having Clyde Edwards Helaire on the roster. Is Andy Reid has the luxury of kind of getting fancy with Le'Veon Bell, exploiting him as a receiver, splitting him out in the slot. Again, we know Bell has hands, and I think a lot of us assume that he's going to be the next post Adam Gase success story. We've seen Gase players out of Miami and obviously New York and things they go on to do after being under Adam Gase's control there, so to speak. So again, I think the Chiefs definitely have the landing spot makes so much sense. Just given Reid's history and given what Bell does well, so I think the Chiefs can definitely get kind of creative with him. Again, I think a lot of what we saw initially on the timeline was just like we always do, just those gut overreactions. And yeah, I mean, again, I don't think a lot of them come to fruition, but we're also foolish to say that Bell's not going to at all impact Edwards Helaire, because I think that's certainly there's definitely going to be some sort of level to that as well.
100%. So, okay, Brad, I know that I was on the bandwagon going into this year. I owned him in a couple dynasty leagues. I did some startups. What the hell's going on with Mecole Hardman? Is he not the guy that he was projected to be? Do we need to wait a little longer? What's the deal here?
So I mentioned it earlier. He's not an X-receiver. So I did not agree with any of the narratives where Sammy Watkins is hurt. That means it's a big Mecole Hardman game, because that's not his role. He's still the when Watkins is healthy, Hardman is the 4th receiver on this team. Demarcus Robinson's the 3rd guy, and Demarcus Robinson profiles as an X a whole lot more. Let's put it this way, a lot closer to an X than Mecole Hardman does. Hardman, a lot of his plays last year, I mean, he had a lot of touchdowns, but a lot of them were on either just straight bomb fly routes or broken plays where Mahomes is scrambling and then Hardman just outruns the defensive back and turns it into a big play. But he's not a great route runner. He can't block at all. And that's why they feel like he's, in some ways, I think, a liability on the field. When they know he's out there, they're not running the ball, or they're not going to run the ball to his side anyways. And the defense knows that. So they have to kind of pick and choose when he's out there. And that's why he's not getting the snap share. He's not getting the targets, because number one, I mean, if you have Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and Clyde Edwards Helaire on your team, at a minimum, he's the 4th option. When Sammy Watkins is out there, he's the 5th or 6th option. Like, it's just not a good scenario for him to be productive right now. And it's not that he can't be. I think he's improved from last year, but I think a lot of people saw the touchdown numbers last year and started comparing him a little bit to obviously not style of play, but it was similar efficiency numbers to what AJ Brown did. And you can't even put those two on the same map as what kind of a football player they are. So, even though you'd rather have a receiver in the Chiefs offense than the Titans offense, all things even. But then at that point, you look at AJ Brown and the type of receiver he is, there's a reason he's efficient. And you look at the plays where Hardman scored last year, and they were not like good technical route quality plays. it was just everything breaking down, or the Raiders blowing coverages, and all of a sudden he's got a 60-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
And I had to get my Raiders jab in because they beat us last week. So
that's okay. That's okay. We for all the reasons we love Clyde Edwards Helaire is, it's kind of backfiring on someone like Hardman. We want to gravitate towards these players that are attached to this Kansas City Chief offense. Certainly, Edwards Helaire, again, we just spent talking about him. That was the reason why he shot up draft boards and why guys like Nate are touting him, and why I'm so high on him. But for someone like Hardman, as Brad kind of just hit on, there's, and the offseason hype certainly built up. And again, for a lot of the Kansas City Chiefs, Mahomes type reasons, which are understandable to an extent. But the reality is, as again, Brad alluded to, is you're not going to leapfrog Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. And, after seeing the Chiefs go out and invest in a young running back in Edwards Helaire, and now bringing someone like Lev Bell, not to mention someone like Sammy Watkins, who's still dinged up, the issue is, Hardman just the mountain is so tall. The road is so long. He has so much ground to make up, and it's not to say that he's a bad player, but it's kind of all the mouths to feed at this point are kind of working against him. He hasn't topped 6 targets this year, coming off a 34%, 35% snap share last week. Just the last game against Buffalo. So, and that's kind of really where he's going to settle, I imagine, for the season, unless there is some catastrophic, hopefully not injury to guys like Kelce and Hill. It's going to be hard for him to kind of leapfrog and kind of really carve out a substantial, consistent role in this offense. Just way too many mouths to feed.
And I'll be honest, like looking back at it, I don't think he was the guy the Chiefs really, really wanted to draft right there. But if you remember, like the night of the draft, or like the night before, it was the night of the first round, the recording of this conversation of Tyreek Hill and his ex-girlfriend and that stuff broke. And it was like, I think the Chiefs all of a sudden felt pressured, like
panicked.
We don't know if Tyreek Hill is going to be available for us this season because we don't know how this is going to play out. It was just such fresh information. In reality, like if they were going to draft a receiver there, DK Metcalf would have been a way better option for, and not even for what he's been, but just the type of receiver to put opposite Tyreek Hill. They could have used him as a complementary piece to Hill as opposed to trying to replace Hill, because and I feel like that's exactly what they tried to do with Hardman, and it just isn't working out that way yet.
Wow. No, that's a great point. I really have never heard it laid out like that. Wow. I'm glad they didn't get DK, though, to be quite honest with you. I'm extremely happy they didn't get DK. Okay, so my Mecole Hardman dynasty stock is dead. Thank you. That's good. ADP is going to sink. What about Mostert? What about Raheem Mostert? What's up with his stock? And Jerick McKinnon, JaMycal Hasty, which one of these two guys should, fantasy gamers be interested in?
I feel like none of these guys are Raheem Mostert to me. He's kind of come out of nowhere and been way better than every single person that, even coaches. He's been with several different teams. He's so much better than everybody thought he would be. And when you watch him, he's fast, he's explosive, and it's, he talk about running with a chip on his shoulder. It feels like this guy, every time he breaks the huddle, is like, this team cut me, I'm going to run it to him. And it's fun to watch, but because of his running style and how hard he runs, he gets hurt a lot. Like, he's banged up all the time. And it reminds me a lot of when Matt Breida was there. It was like, he just never avoids contact, and consequently he ends up, nicked up a lot. That being said, I feel like McKinnon's going to be the kind of the pass catching guy. And he's going to, at a minimum, split carries with Hasty while Tevin Coleman's still out or whatever the scenario is. Like, McKinnon's the guy I want there. I think Hasty's a good option because McKinnon could get hurt at any moment. I mean, he's obviously got a little bit of a prone tag, and so at any moment, Hasty could be the guy there with Jeff Wilson coming back off the streets to try to fill a role. But if I'm going to pick up a guy right now, McKinnon's probably the guy that I'm going after. But from a dynasty standpoint, when everybody's healthy and we're all back at the beginning of next season, you're still looking at probably a number 3 running back out of these guys at best. And, hopefully, I forget, is this the last year McKinnon's deal, or if he's got one more?
Last year.
If they might have last year. So he may even be gone. And at that point, with the free agent running back class, with the rookie running back class that's coming in, even though it's kind of top heavy, McKinnon's going to be a backup somewhere next year. Like, there's not a lot of dynasty value here, but he might help you win a league this year.
Yeah, and I think we saw Mostert obviously certainly emerge and give Kyle Shanahan just that confidence to ride him. Unfortunately, as Brad alluded to, the injuries just haven't really been cooperating, which was the story with McKinnon for a couple seasons before, and now he's finally healthy. Hasty had nine carries to McKinnon's 6 carries, and Hasty was the player that was in the game to kind of close things out, which kind of speaks volumes for how this staff views him. I know we saw a lot this offseason, and obviously reading between the lines and training camp was hard to get a real feel on given the COVID environment. But this is a front office and a coaching staff that really liked Hasty and said a lot of positive, said kind of all the right things, all the positive buzz. And Shanahan kind of backed that up with kind of trotting him out there on Sunday and letting him kind of get that work in, and almost outproduce and outshine, so to speak, someone like McKinnon. Now, I think McKinnon, assuming he's healthy and Hasty is healthy as well, and all things considered, I imagine they maybe go back and lean towards McKinnon, but Hasty's definitely going to chip in, and certainly dent, whatever kind of role that McKinnon had prior to Hasty's, we'll call it emergence. I think that's definitely going to be downgraded a little bit, just given how much the staff, I think, truly does, really enjoy Hasty's style of play.
Look, Jerick McKinnon had one game this year where he exceeded 62% snap share. He had a 92% snap share. In that game, he finished as the RB6 overall in week 4. Jerick McKinnon still has the juice. I'm predicting he goes to the New York Giants next year. I'm going to continue to say that. The thing about JaMycal Hasty, here's my take, and people hate this because Matt Kelly has one side of the world. I have another side of the world in this vast world of opinions. Undrafted free agents, especially undersized undrafted free agents. If this guy at some point gets the full workload from Jerick McKinnon, trade him immediately. Move on from him immediately. I can't count the amount of times I see people in dynasty leagues and they hold on to these guys. Like they believe that somehow this undrafted free agent is going to ascend to the top and become the full-time starter in this offense. It doesn't happen. It's such a rarity. I've said this before. I could close my eyes and you could just tell me he was an undrafted free agent and I'm going to win 90% of the time telling you he's going to flop. I'm going to win almost 90% of the time. The James Robinson thing, that hasn't happened for a long time. Like this is shocking, okay? Like don't get that completely like twisted. James Robinson, what is happening with him does not happen. That's an irregular occurrence. So it's a rarity. JaMycal Hasty, if he gets the opportunity, sell him. That is my dynasty information for you. But I agree with Ryan. I actually think that Jerick McKinnon's going to be the guy to own in this offense. He's still got the juice. He's played well when given opportunity. 2 top 15 finishes already this year. So that's who I'm looking forward to. Okay, this is a great one. This is probably the best one on the show sheet. I'm going to be honest with you, Brad. When? And who do we ask this question to? We asked somebody.
I think we were talking to Ray recently.
Maybe it was Ray. We asked Ray, how long till Jalen Hurts steps in at starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles? Brad, I'm going to ask you the same question. How long?
I might need to hear his answer first because now I'm second guessing if I'm going to be compared to the G. So
yeah.
That being said, like there is no way it's this year. Like I don't think he's anywhere close to ready as a quarterback. Now I'm not saying he can't be a weapon for them. And right now, I mean, Lord knows they need him. Like they've got nobody. I mean, Travis Fulgham is their best receiver. They've only got Greg Ward and Richard Rodgers they're running out there. It's like, I mean, they've lost Miles Sanders. Zach Ertz is out, and he was sucking anyways. They might get Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson back this week. But even if they're back, we have no idea if they've even got anything left in the tank. I'm wondering if this week might be the beginning of tight end Hakeem Butler coming out of nowhere and
we need it, Brad. We need it.
I know you do. But there's a chance. Like you never know because right now Wentz is going to throw to anybody who's open because you can't he didn't have a single guy on the field that he knows is going to be open when he drops back. Like it used to be Zach Ertz, even Jeffrey. Like he could throw contested catches. Like that's not Fulgham's game. That's not Greg Ward's game. These guys have to be open, and Wentz is running for his life half the time anyway. So, but that being said, as bad as Wentz has looked at times, they were a 2-point conversion away from taking the Ravens to overtime last week, and that's a good defense. And he brought them back. I mean, they had no business being in that game, and he willed them back in the second half. And I think at a minimum that put Jalen Hurts on the back burner for the rest of the season, barring an injury. But I do think, it's going to be a potential Taysom Hill type situation where not that, he might see some snaps as quarterback, but you never know what's going to happen. But I will say this, I would trust Jalen Hurts way more than I would trust Taysom Hill as far as like if he's going to take a step back, because I feel like Taysom Hill, it's so washed right now. Like it's a disaster every time he's going back there instead of Drew Brees. And, we know Brees hasn't been himself this year. And at the same time, Hill's worse. And with Hurts, there's at least some upside. There's at least this potential of no one has film on him. No one, he's probably a better athlete than 90% of the guys on the field, and he can throw. And you mix that in and mix it in occasionally. I just think, for 2020, I don't see any way he even sneaks into a fantasy lineup at any point. But in a dynasty league, a 2-quarterback league, a super flex league, I'd be very interested in snagging him, because I do think there's a chance that by the end of the Wentz contract that they turn it over to Hurts and let Wentz walk.
And for the record, I believe, and Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Ray's answer was very similar to Brad's in that, it's going to be hard to see, Wentz get completely just replaced Wally Pipp this season. So I think that's fair. However, this question will continue to show up on the show sheet every week, and we'll add it to our repetitive list of questions, Nate. As long as Doug Peterson keeps giving us quotes like, and I quote here, could see things continuing to increase with Jalen Hurts' role in the offense. So again, I think that is, as Brad kind of hinted at, just a product of the environment. And, you look at another example might be the weapons surrounding Cam Newton this season in New England. Not great. You look at Carson Wentz's situation. Not great. 3 out of his 5 offensive line starters are banged up. Jalen Reagor on IR. Miles Sanders now banged up. I believe Zach Ertz got hurt last week. Alshon Jeffrey is a ghost. Deshaun Jackson is nowhere to be found. So, if anyone gets the benefit of the doubt, you would assume it's Carson Wentz. And again, his play certainly has been bad. And I think he needs to shoulder some of that blame. But then you look at what is going on around him. Things aren't great. It's not a healthy team by any stretch of the imagination. Because it's not healthy, it's not talented. The weapons around him, they're just not there. He had Miles Sanders. Now he's going to miss a couple weeks. It's just not roses. So I can definitely see Hurts kind of forcing Peterson's hand to, I think the Taysom Hill parallel is very interesting to kind of get him more involved. There's going to be a lot more specific packages. I don't think you're going to see a complete transition to Hurts under center as the starting quarterback. That probably is a season or so away. And again, we'll see what happens whenever this team does get healthy. That's when you kind of have to sit back and reevaluate. You would assume that the seat does get a little bit warmer for Wentz at some point whenever that does happen, because they have someone like Hurts who is talented enough and personable enough and charismatic and does all the intangibles, checks all those boxes. So they have theoretically an option behind Wentz now, which is really the interesting thing as far as dynasty leagues go.
Yeah, with some serious draft capital too.
Legit.
But I'll also tell you who should not get the benefit of the doubt at this point is the Eagles medical training staff, strength and conditioning staff. Like how are they not cleaning house there after 2 straight years of this? Like you got to feel like this offseason, if Peterson's there, gone, whatever, I know there's been some hot seat rumors with him, but they have to figure something out to keep this team healthy, because they spent a second overall pick on their quarterback, and he's got nothing around him ever since the Super Bowl year. They've just been completely atrocious.
Yeah, they're very Chargers-esque in that sense, unfortunately.
Well, to the point of not having anybody around him, currently this year, Carson Wentz has been sacked the most. He's seen the most blitzes, and he's been pressured the most of any quarterback in the league. It's not good, and he's throwing the ball to Fulgham, and Brad named everybody else. We don't even need to talk about these guys. By the way, sell in Dynasty. Don't even say these names to me. I'm going to barf. Don't even bring them up. It's embarrassment. Carson Wentz has nobody around him. That being said, this team is 1-4-1. So, who knows? If this team is playing really, really poorly by the end of the year, maybe they just want to see what they have in Jalen Hurts. I don't know. I realize Wentz is signed, well beyond this year, but it's going to be interesting, Brad. And it's going to get
maybe they'll draft Jamar Chase.
Why not?
Hey, now.
they'll be in a position to at the top of the draft.
Yeah, yeah. If anybody, that's the guy. Listen, Brad. So Matt Kelly sent me a message. I've not heard it yet, and he told me he wanted me to play it for you on this show. Now, the contents of this file, I have no idea. Okay, I don't know if it's clean. I don't know if it's dirty. I know nothing about it, Brad.
Knowing Kelly, it's definitely dirty.
Is he told me, no, I need you to play this for Brad on the show or you're fired. And I said, okay. I go, you don't
say no more.
I don't actually work for you, but I go, okay, all right. I don't want to be pretend fired. So I'm going to play this file from the great Matt Kelly, and we will see what this says. Here we go.
Hey, Brad, how does my shit taste after I shit all over you with that Lamar Jackson trade that I totally won? I'm so glad I was able to get Baker Mayfield and Carson Wentz with those picks. Ugh. You're supposed to be a closer. You couldn't close a door. And fantasy trades aren't your thing, I guess.
Okay, so
sweet drunk dial.
Yeah, so
stumbling around, leaving voicemails.
He was adamant that I play this file. Right. I don't know what to say. So there was a trade in an I'm Outraged league. Is that correct? Is that where this is stemming from?
Yeah. So this was during the draft, during the first round. I had the first overall pick, and I had traded back to 6. I traded McCaffrey. I got the first overall pick and like a second rounder and like a 6th rounder also. Mm-hmm. So I was just stocking extra picks. And it gets to 5, and Lamar Jackson's still there, and that's Matt's pick. And so I send Matt a message and just said, hey, would you want to swap me 5 and 6? What would you want for that pick? And he said, well, who are you going after? And I said, Lamar Jackson. And this is in a Twitter DM. I have it still. He says, he won't be there. And I said, no, you're on the clock, and he is there. And
classic
so at that point, he's like, oh, wait a second. What if you want both picks? You get to draft at 5 and 6. He said, I want a second rounder, and I remember, I think it was like a second, a third, and then like a 2021 first round rookie pick in a 16-team league. And I'm looking at this, like if I get Lamar Jackson and then whatever running back I want there, which I ended up taking Kamara, and that's worked out pretty well so far.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a contending team. This is going to be a late pick, which, it's going to look like a early second round pick in a 12-team league. So I'm good with that at that point. And, even if Jackson, has struggled a little bit this year, he's still better than Baker Mayfield and Carson Wentz. And
that's for sure.
And he also offered me last week, he offered me Jimmy G for DJ Shark and a first round pick in 2022. And I was just like, he knows I'm hurting at quarterback a little bit, because other than Lamar Jackson, my only other quarterback is Drew Brees, and this may be the end for him. And at that point, I don't have a second quarterback in a super flex league, and I have no draft picks. And so there's some, I realize there's some risk there, but I'm not going to just mortgage my whole team for a dude coming off a high ankle sprain that hasn't looked the best yet. I mean, even last game, he's a middle of the pack quarterback at best in fantasy. So I still like DJ Shark. Wasn't doing that, but at the same time, I feel I still liked the deal even after I did it. I was like, you know what? I gave up a lot there, had, in retrospective, but Matt just decided he was tanking that league and loading up on draft picks.
Worst.
I mean, he didn't pick until like the 6th round. He just kept trading back. And he has like 5 or 6 2021 first round picks now. Mm-hmm. But if they're not in the top 5, which his pick is going to be in the top 5 because of it. But outside of that, you're not looking at either the 2 best running backs. You're not looking at the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks. And at that point, the wide receivers in this next class are just as good from 106, 107 all the way to like 205 or so. Mm-hmm. So I'm completely content with the deal. Matt can eat my shoe. I'll keep it on my
there you go. I've heard so much from him about this league. He called me like 3 Saturdays ago and I pick up the phone. It's like Saturday morning, and he just starts laughing. He's laughing hysterically. We haven't exchanged words yet. And he's laughing his ass off. And he's like, oh, this roster. And he's going through it. And he's like, look at all these first round picks and all these players. And I'm like, listen, man, I don't want to listen to you brag about this roster because I think my team is falling apart in that league. That format is hard, by the way. I just want to.
The most ridiculous league I've ever played in.
Right?
Oh, man.
And I keep forgetting to change my look at my roster. I feel so bad.
Yeah, I've already made a rule proposal for next year that we eliminate 2 roster spots, and including one of the starting flex spots, because it's got to be trimmed down a little bit. You can't even replace guys when they get hurt, bye weeks, whatever.
There's no one on waivers, dude. It's just dead.
Your commissioner friend, he liked it a lot. I think he's struggling putting a lineup together too, and he's like, "That's a really good idea. I'll propose it in the offseason."
I mean, when you mix the IR with the COVID, yeah, it's a 16-team dynasty league, and you're starting like 14 positions. There's 4 flexes, multiple tight ends, 2 QB. It's like, yeah, we're all starting guys that we would never start in any dynasty league ever. Like I'm just literally going to free agency because I'm so dead in the water that I'm like in free agency just picking up a guy for the week that would never play like in any league. So I have gotten pretty lucky though doing that. So Brad, you brought up Lamar Jackson. You brought up that you thought he could be doing better. What's the correlation between Lamar Jackson and the Marquise Brown air yards right now? So we know that he is currently ranked number 4 in air yards, number 18 in total receiving yards. When are these two going to connect?
Hopefully sooner than later. Obviously Lamar's not as efficient as he was last year. Last year he was off the charts efficient. We all knew that wasn't going to happen again. And when he's only, last week he had like 186 passing yards. Like there's just not enough to go around for almost anybody to be fantasy relevant when there's 186 passing yards on the table. Lamar himself is obviously fantasy relevant. He's still running. He ran for over 100 yards and a touchdown, and that alone makes him fantasy relevant as a quarterback. So, but at this point, like outside of him and Mark Andrews, I don't want anybody on this team in my lineup. And Marquise Brown in a super deep league, like a 16-team league or whatever, yeah, he might win you a week if he, has a game like he did against Miami last year or whatever. But he also could throw up a 2-catch, 12 yards and, on 3 targets. And, now Ingram is potentially out for a while. And so if are you really going to put Gus Edwards in your lineup, with a lot of confidence, or at least, we can't touch J.K. Dobbins right now. There's just no volume for anybody there outside of Lamar and Andrews. And most of Andrews' volume comes in the red zone. So it's just, now, I say that knowing that, like, I'm starting Gus Edwards on a weekly basis in Scott Fishbowl because I had Christian McCaffrey, Damian Williams, Darius Geis, Jalen Hurd, Deshaun Jackson, Dallas Goedert. Like, my team's been crushed with injuries and guys opting out and guys doing his thing. And so that being said, Gus Edwards has been in there every week, and I'm having to scramble to find a bye week replacement for him this week. So it's. But back to Hollywood, like when the team's putting up 30 points and Lamar Jackson's only thrown for 186 yards, there's just no incentive for them to throw more. And at that point, you're very touchdown dependent. And when he's not as efficient as he was last year, then it's just hard to trust him. Like at best, I think he's a wide receiver 4 right now and can be a bye week replacement. But I wouldn't, if everybody on my team's healthy, I wouldn't be putting him out there.
Yeah, he's had 4 weeks in a row now with 80% or higher snap share. He had a monster 217 air yard game back in week 4 against Washington, 141 air yards against Cincinnati week 5, 71 air yards last week. Has not topped a wide receiver 16 finish yet this season. Just been hanging around that 30, 40, 50 range. Just a bunch of duds, really. And the problem is, I think a lot of us that we're ready for a Hollywood breakout, off the heels of, we heard all offseason how he muscled up and he gained like 10 or 15 pounds or something. And he's still a burner, and like everything headline wise and everything you want to read about a team's wide receiver 1, quote unquote wide receiver 1, he was checking those boxes. There was a lot to get excited about. I guess the thought behind all that was that Lamar Jackson would return as the same level passer, if not continue his ascent as a passer. We just haven't quite seen that through 6 weeks yet. And that goes back to, Kelly and and trading Lamar Jackson. Kelly and I spoke about Lamar Jackson last week about how Kelly's big thing about Jackson was let's get one more season under our belt to really see what we have. And right now we're kind of seeing Jackson, as Brad said, a fantastic runner, fantastic athlete, super exciting player. He just hasn't, I guess, nailed down that consistency as a passer year. And I certainly think he can. We saw it last year. We saw him take a jump, and I think he still has that in him. But for whatever reason, this season has not been favorable in that regard. And obviously, someone like Hollywood, who we expected that next level, that jump for, is kind of taking a lot of that damage.
I mean, Lamar Jackson, he's fallen almost 7 fantasy points per game from where he was last season. I mean, that's a massive tumble. And he was hyper efficient last year. And it's already been brought up that there was no way that this was going to reoccur. And we're kind of regressing back to sort of a more normal state here. I wish Baltimore would get the running backs more involved in the pass game. But again, as we've talked about on other podcasts, I just don't know how much extra room there is for that with Lamar Jackson doing the running that he is doing. Brad, we got a question. The New York Jets are 0-6. They absolutely stink. This is no doubt the worst team in the league. They've recently let Lev Bell go. He ended up in Kansas City to be the backup behind Clyde Edwards Helaire. Deep backup. What about La'Mical Pirine? Is there any hope for him as a starter going forward with Frank Gore here and the recent signing of Ty Johnson?
Yeah, potentially. But do you really want any starting running back under Adam Gase? Like, it's just, It's
next question.
You almost hope that, okay, he flashes a little bit here and there, then they fire Gase, and then all of a sudden he's got a chance to be good. But there's no way Gase coaches next year, right? Not as a head coach with the Jets. There's no way that could still happen. If it does, then he's got compromising photos of someone in the front office, because there is just no way. But I heard on another podcast the other day, I think there's something to this too, that they won't fire Gase during the season, because at that point, once Gase is gone, there's no one left for the New York media to turn to except the GM and the owner, and those guys don't want the heat on them. They would rather keep it on Gase for the rest of the year.
That makes sense.
Then fire him in the offseason and bring in somebody new at that point. Because they can't hire any assistant coaches right now away from anybody. They'd just be filling from within. But they could just be, doing the same thing the Texans are doing, but just right now, Gase is on the payroll, but we're already looking to see who we want for our coaching options next year. And hopefully their front office is smart enough to be doing that, because they're going to be, most likely trading Sam Darnold and drafting Trevor Lawrence. And if that happens, you need to bring in an offensive-minded coach that can let Trevor Lawrence be what he is at Clemson, just airing it out right and left, making great decisions with the ball. And I mean, it's just going back to Pirine. It just is so. I mean, you're talking a late draft pick. There's not a ton of athleticism. At the same time, if you're desperate this year with all the injuries that have happened across the board, you could probably do worse, but I don't know who that worse would be.
My favorite New York Jets fever dream is some way, somehow, at the end of all this, Adam Gase just traded away. He's gotten rid of Bell. The rumor is Quinnen Williams is on the block. My favorite scenario in all this is some way, somehow, Adam Gase walks out with a 3-year extension or something like that. That would just be so beautiful for all of us. No, in reality, and the reason the onus behind this question was what the hell are we doing with Jets players in general? I really don't think anyone is approaching you for anyone that maybe isn't even Denzel Mims. Are you excited to go out and acquire Denzel Mims? Maybe more so than someone like Pirine or Sam Darnold, young player who has flashed some sort of ability, and we just assume, again, going back to Bell, the post Adam Gase players Sam Darnold, he's an interesting chip, I guess, but just all of these Jet players, unfortunately, have this Adam Gase stink about them. And so I'm just curious if you guys roster very many Jets and kind of what your thought is going forward. You're hoping for Trevor Lawrence, I guess, is how this whole thing ends.
Yeah, I mean, Denzel Mims is clearly a guy you still want to roster. I mean, people dislike Mims because they haven't seen him. I mean, people should still be on board. Hyper-athletic players stood out at the Senior Bowl. And again, in the blink of an eye, if this becomes a Trevor Lawrence quarterback team, suddenly he becomes very favorable. I mean, we're seeing it with another player we're going to mention here in a second with a rookie quarterback. But yeah, I think Denzel Mims is absolutely a guy I want. La'Mical Pirine, I have zero interest in, not even the smallest fraction. If I was in redraft and I was really struggling, maybe I would take him. But again, if you have La'Mical Pirine, and he gets any opportunity to lead this backfield, sell. Do not hold him for more than one game. Ship him down the line. I will take a 2021 third for him. Brad, T. Higgins. Can we talk about T. Higgins for a minute? He was kind of slept on because of the pro day production, not doing what people expected him to do at the combine, not testing. Lands with Joe Burrow in the Cincinnati offense, and he's ascended past AJ Green. Clearly, correct?
Yeah, for sure. And I've heard some rumors prior to the breakout even that T. Higgins was who Burrow handpicked out of the draft. They told him, asked him, what wide receiver do you want to work with? Of who was left anyways. Overnight, they had the first pick of the second round, and that was the answer that he gave them, and they said it was a quick answer. So if that's true, then, I mean, he's obviously shown some favoritism towards him. I'm a huge Clemson fan. I've watched Higgins the last 3 years with a whole lot of favor. I mean, he's just a baller. Like, he may not be the best athlete, but I feel like whenever he's playing in a game, he's a better athlete than what he tested as, because it's not like he looks slow on the field. And it took him a little bit to get going. I mean, he didn't hardly play in the first game because he was dealing with a hamstring all summer and just had almost no reps. And then all of a sudden, AJ Green gets hurt. John Ross is sucking, and it's like, you know what? Like, let's throw this guy out there. It's kind of like the quarterback, with the Dolphins and Tua. You got to see what you have at some point. Mm-hmm. So let's see what we have in T. Higgins. And from the first time he got out there and started getting opportunities, he's now leading the team in snaps at wide receiver. He's getting tremendous volume. We all love Burrow going forward. Like, how do you not love this pair? And I mean, I'll give you a Matt Kelly line. He started using it this year a lot, like buy high. Like, I would buy high on T. Higgins because I don't think the price is going to get any lower anytime soon, and it's only going to go up. It's just like my Patrick Mahomes rookie cards.
Week 3, T. Higgins enters the picture kind of more officially at that point. He did play in week 2. It like Brad said, kind of a slower start, but week 3, a monster 88% snap share, 9 targets, finished the wide receiver 13, 150 air yards. Scroll down to week 6, coming off of week 6 now, back up to an 83% target share, wide receiver 11 finish. This guy is just quickly becoming, the go-to. I don't even know if he's gonna overstep or hop over someone like Tyler Boyd. But gosh, if the rumors are true, as Brad said, that he was the handpicked, Joe Burrow option, the go-to, clearly that's showing up early and often here, just given the trust that Burrow has in Higgins here. Green is unfortunately dust. John Ross, as of today, I believe, requested a trade out. So this offense is certainly going to revolve around T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd going forward, at least through the air. And I think buying high on Higgins, NATO, is probably the prudent move, unless you were smart enough to gobble him up early on, given the kind of the pro day questions as you kind of hit on.
I mean, there might have been pro day questions, but the Breakout Finder didn't have any questions, Ryan.
No questions.
Breakout Finder loved him. Listen, I don't want to talk about T. Higgins, guys, because I think if Joe Burrow could have, he would have picked somebody different. I think he would have picked Justin Jefferson. Brad, Justin Jefferson is setting the league ablaze. Would you rather have Justin Jefferson than T. Higgins?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But when Burrow's looking at, how many 5 or 6 receivers were already off the board at that point, and you look at who's left. I think to at least, if I was looking at it, to me, so you're looking at like who was there, Michael Pittman, Denzel Mims, like there were, and there might be some later guys too. I mean, Gabriel Davis is looking good, even though he's a little bit later. But I mean, Higgins was so prolific in college, and you talk about contested catches. Yeah, he made a lot of contested catches, but he was also open a lot too. Like, he's a good route runner. Like, he could do it all. He reminds me a lot. I know he got a lot of AJ Green comps when he went to Cincinnati. He reminds me a lot of DeAndre Hopkins. and that he's not the fastest guy, but when you throw him the ball, he's going to find a way to come down with it. And at a minimum, he's going to make sure that you don't get picked off. You know, if it's a pass that he's not going to get to, he's not going to let the defender get it. And that's a guy that a quarterback loves to throw to at that point, because he feels like if he makes a mistake, the guy's going to bail him out. And even then, you know, he's proven over and over again he can do this. He's gonna be productive. And now they've obviously got this connection going. Like, how could you not want this guy for the next 5-7 years?
And I don't want to steal your thunder, because this past Sunday, coming off of his Justin Jefferson Sunday contest here, I found a tweet of yours from back in April on your beautiful Patreon where you said Justin Jefferson is wildly underrated in rookie drafts, and you couldn't be more right, man. Week 6, Atlanta, 93.9% snap share, 11 targets, 9 receptions, 2 scores, wide receiver 1 finish. He already had a wide receiver 2 finish under his belt back in week 3 against Tennessee. I mean, man, this guy, we talk about ascending players like T. Higgins. I mean, Justin Jefferson, man, the sky seems to be the limit. And all those questions, Nato, about he was just playing across Jamar Chase. I don't really know how good he'll be, in the next level on his own. Dude, all that, push all that aside. You got yourself a player in Justin Jefferson.
How about this? Can anybody tell me what his slot snap percentage was when he was in college? I mean, in 2019, I believe it was like 98.2%.
It was very
of his receptions.
That was the question. That was the question mark for Justin Jefferson.
27.2% rate out of the slot. He's not running out of the slot. Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, and almost all of that was early when Olabisi Johnson was on the outside.
Exactly. And this guy's taken off last 4 games, over an 81% snap share, 93% snap share last game. You don't put it back in the bottle. That's what's happening right now. You can't even.
No, and it's.
Go ahead, Brad.
Go. I was gonna say it's absolutely amazing to me that Adam Thielen is the wide receiver 2, Justin Jefferson's the wide receiver 5, and Kirk Cousins is the quarterback 17. Like there is just something about that doesn't add up, other than the fact that he throws interception after interception. But it's mind-blowing to me that he can't be better than that when he's got 2 elite guys outside. He can throw the ball to Dalvin Cook all day long, minus his last game when Cook was hurt. But Cook gets a lot of targets out of the backfield too. Like, when you're throwing to those 3 guys and they're that productive all the time, how are you not a better fantasy quarterback? It just doesn't make sense.
And they've got Irv Smith, who's doing his thing too. I mean, Kirk Cousins has 10 interceptions this year. He's on that Eli Manning path. He's got 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. It's crazy. He's been really bad this year, but yes, I mean, Justin Jefferson has exceeded expectations. And I remember in most rookie drafts that I was in, non-super flex ones, it was always Jalen Reagor and Justin Jefferson. Kind of those 2 guys kind of went one before the other, or flip-flop. Those 2 guys were neck and neck. And I'm excited to see Reagor in the future, but Justin Jefferson, far and away. I mean, could he win Rookie of the Year? I mean, amongst the offensive playmakers. I mean, I don't see why he can't. I don't know who else is his stiffest competition.
Justin Herbert keeps balling,
for sure.
Man. That might be something
for sure.
But again, I think the big takeaway, Nate. I mean, if we're talking victory laps here, buddy, you gotta pat yourself on the back, sir. I mean, this was a hell of a call on your part, and because I was on the kind of the opposite side where I certainly had those questions, and I maybe it's my Jamar Chase fandom, man. I don't know, but I had those questions, and I kind of questioned Kirk Cousins. I don't know, but dude, Justin Jefferson far and away exceeding.
Yeah, he's a baller, man.
Yeah, and I remember there were a lot of questions about were these guys a product of the LSU system last year?
Yep.
I mean, CEH is balling, Burrow's balling, and now Jefferson's balling, and it's like, no, these guys were just freaking good, and that makes me love Jamar Chase even more. Like he was the best player on that team last year.
Yeah, and that was Nate's big takeaway, man. Is we're gonna step back right now. If we're not doing it right now, we're gonna step back into the season and just look around and say these guys were just really good football players that just all happened to play on the same team, and you saw the result of that on offense and with the national championship for sure.
I mean, it's ridiculous, and Justin Jefferson has been so much better than I think many people expected, and he was absolutely a value in rookie drafts. And again, I think if people could go back and redraft these rookie drafts, the way it shook out, Jerry Jeudy went ahead of him in a lot of spots. I mean, and again, we like the talent of Jeudy, but I mean, Judy or Higgins right now, really. Like, I think everybody would pick Higgins, right? I mean, Judy and it's funny too because Cortland Sutton's been out and they've had the injuries and stuff, but we all said that there was too many mouths to feed there, that it was going to be too difficult to facilitate the passing volume to all these players. Like, it was a terrible landing spot, and we all knew it was a terrible landing spot to start with. But a lot of those guys went before players like Justin Jefferson. So shame on everybody that could have had Justin Jefferson. You really blew it. You really screwed the pooch on this one. And I don't really even know what that means. Okay.
It just felt right.
I don't know what that means. I don't want to dig into it. Brad, Cam Akers of the Big Five running backs. And I read a tweet the other day. Somebody said Cam Akers wasn't a part of the Big Five, and I blocked him on Twitter. I've only blocked 2 people. One guy said something that was incredibly offensive. This guy was the second. It was a stupid statement. Brad, Cam Akers, no touches last week. What's going on here?
That's a hard one to explain other than, because McVay came out and said after he went like 9 carries, 61 yards the week before, he's going to get on the field more. He's going to see the ball more. And then he only had like 2 snaps. Like it wasn't even a lack of touches. He wasn't even on the field. And to me, there is no excuse for that. The Rams, they are so in love with Malcolm Brown, and I don't get it. The only thing I can think is that maybe they're trying to increase his trade value because every time Darrell Henderson starts and gets carries, he plays well. Every time Cam Akers gets a chance, he plays well. They're just not getting the chance that often. But it's like maybe Malcolm Brown is, I don't know, a better pass blocker, a better, a smarter football player. But he's not as gifted, and they have so much opportunity there to just run with 2 of these guys. Maybe, like I said, maybe they'll trade Malcolm Brown here in a couple of weeks and turn these guys loose because I think there's a chance that these 2 guys, Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers, could be a light version of the Browns tandem running backs when they're playing well, when they're both healthy and stuff. I think there's a place for both of them there, and I love Akers. I really like the long-term future there. I love him in that offense. I don't understand the infatuation with Malcolm Brown, but you can't deny that it's there right now, whatever the motive behind it.
The Rams running back situation for the past 2 seasons, and now obviously bleeding over to this season with Cam Akers and what's going on there. And in McVay's defense, we assume maybe it's an Akers, the injury is lingering or something like that. He just wasn't 100% to start Sunday, whatever it was, but all the Darrell Henderson kind of hype last year, and that really didn't boil down to much. And then Cam Akers comes in, and then a lot of buzz, chit chat here and there, and then obviously banged up. And now McVay coming out week before, like Brad said, we got to get him more involved. And then what does he do? It's literally he was not even on the field, 0 carries, nothing. So I think this goes back to what we were kind of talking about earlier, and certainly in previous pods, which is just about certainly with these rookies, it's just about patience and being able to hunker down and weather the storm and ride out these kind of weird droughts here where, a lot of coach speak isn't shaking out, the narratives aren't shaking out, whatever. Like Brad said, this is a talented player. Just believe in the talent, believe in the situation. The Rams definitely are exceeding my expectations on offense this season. I kind of left them for dead. But when that time comes, and it should come soon, at some point this season, Akers should continue to rise. There's going to be fantasy points to gobble up there for sure.
I mean, I know Todd Gurley was pretty washed last season, but Darrell Henderson, we saw this happen with him last year. We saw this sort of lagging opportunity. Malcolm Brown still sort of in the mix, and people were like, oh, he's a bust. He's not getting opportunity. It's not going to work. Fast forward a year. Darrell Henderson's the guy at this point. In the second, that same thing is happening with Cam Akers. He's lagging a little bit, but I think with McVay, and you can look at the tendencies at least since he's been coaching here. They want to give the ball to one guy. They want one guy to be the feature back in this offense. And right now, that appears to be Henderson. But I don't think anybody's giving up on Akers. Again, the guy had one of the worst college offensive lines for back-to-back seasons in his final 2 years. So we know that he's wildly talented, and he has the draft capital. So the opportunity is coming. I mean, again, it's a second-round pick. They're not going to go to him at some point. So I just keep waiting. Here's a question, though. When we're talking about running backs that weren't getting an opportunity, DeAndre Swift is one of the guys that comes to mind. Now, I asked Matt Kelly on the last podcast, I go, how come you're not absolutely lampooning DeAndre Swift because Adrian Peterson is continuing to get starter snaps over him? He didn't say anything about it. He basically said, look, DeAndre Swift is going to show out at some point. I think we all agree that was going to be the case. But I just wanted to point out to Matt Kelly that if it was anybody else, Clyde Edwards Helaire, let's say, would have absolutely driven a nail through him. But DeAndre Swift comes out, plays out of his mind last week, Brad. What did that do for his dynasty status? Are people finally woke?
I think so. I mean, from a dynasty standpoint, if you already had him, you spend a top 5 pick on him, and you're not going to just give him up for nothing 4 or 5 games into his rookie year. But he's still I feel like it's still a little bit of a mirage, at least for this year, because he only played 37% of the snaps last week. He only had 42% of the Lions running back rushes, so he was super efficient. It was against the Jaguars. It was a good game script to get him an opportunity. They play the Falcons this week, which is a middle-of-the-pack rush defense, but they're probably going to have to throw to keep up with the Falcons. Let's be honest. If Julio's healthy, that's going to be a shootout. But the Falcons have given up 10 touchdowns on the ground, which is the most in football. So he might, and he got 3 goal line carries last week. So there's an opportunity at least for him to double up on that, in a second week. I do think they'll figure it out at some point, but at this point, I don't trust Matt Patricia with anything. When he makes the comments he did a few weeks ago about we're still trying to, figure some things out, and it was that's what he said whenever he got hired. And here we are 3 or 4 years later, and he's still trying to figure things out and find ways to get better. That team's done nothing but get worse since he's been there. They were a playoff team whenever he got there, and they were looking to get over the hump, and they're atrocious since then. So I love Swift. He was actually the guy pre-draft that if the Chiefs were going to take a running back in the first round, that was kind of who, in my mind, this is the guy that I could see them taking. He's a great pass catcher, can be a bell cow. I'm totally obviously comfortable with CEH, but I think Swift can be a really dynamic back. Adrian Peterson, obviously he's not the long-term solution, or at least we don't think so. He might play for another 5 years, and
Frank Gore-esque.
Yeah. So, but you got to think at some point he's going to get another opportunity to have another 100-yard game. And when that happens, after a second time doing it, there's no way they're going to look back at that point. They're just going to turn the reins over to him, make Kerryon Johnson the backup completely, and get Adrian Peterson out of there. He's a great guy to have in the locker room. I'm sure he's a good leader, and he seems to get along with everybody wherever he's at. But there's no upside there, and they have to step back and see this in a bigger picture and realize there's one guy that might take off and all of a sudden elevate our offense to levels that we haven't had since Barry Sanders left. And there's a chance. I'm not saying he's Barry Sanders, but he's better than anybody they've had since then.
Mm-hmm. And that was one of we talk about these pre-draft knocks for a lot of these players, Higgins, and I'm not talking about Swift. That was my big thing, when he did get drafted was Detroit. And do you trust Matt Patricia? And go back and, Nate and Kelly have talked so much about just situation, how it's ever evolving. You really can't get too hung up on it. And that certainly holds true with Swift and every other player for the most part. And if you were a smart fantasy manager and took advantage of a not so smart fantasy manager that was panicking and looking to offload and sell, and I don't see it through Swift through 5 weeks, so here, take them. So these are the type of players that, and there was an awesome article that dropped on Breakout Finder. One of the newer contributors, Daniel Jolly, wrote up how Dobbins, Swift, and Akers, those guys have all been targets, and obviously the window for Swift now certainly closed. And this is why you target these rookies, as Brad was saying earlier. These type of talents, we have plenty of film from their collegiate days, and we spend so many countless stupid hours analyzing every single move and snap and film and number and all this stuff. So we know Swift is talented. The situation probably isn't the greatest, but these kind of performances, albeit, as Brad said, against a lower level team, a lower level defense, lower level rush defense, that's what he's supposed to do against these types of teams. And he certainly went out there and did it. So we know the talent is there. We just got to wait for the situation to kind of evolve and present itself. And that's why you want to jump on these types of players. So if you were smart enough to gather Swift from an impatient owner, congratulations, hats off to you.
God, if anybody was able to get Swift off an owner, that'd be impressive. Oh, God. I'm sure it's happened. Listen, I'm sure it's happened. There was somebody out there that thought Adrian Peterson had 3 or 4 years left in him, and you never know. Brad, okay, listen, I put a lot on the line, okay? we're talking a lot. Like, and I don't have much credibility or street cred or rep. Like, there's not much to lose, but I put it all on the line for Leonard Fournette. Tell me about Ronald Jones. Please tell me you think Ronald Jones stinks. Is he for real? Is this for real?
I don't think he stinks. At the same time, I mean, what is he, like the RB20 in points per game? Like, I don't know that Fournette is a lot better, but
That's the right answer. That's the right answer.
At the same time, like, I don't know that I want a running back in this offense. Like, let's put it this way. I want my two starters to be higher than the RB20. And if I'm, I feel like I'm scrambling if I have to put Ronald Jones as my RB2 or even my flex play. Like, not that they can't be productive, but I mean, Fournette went and kind of balled out and then, was hurt. And now he's, he was emergency only week 5. And, it felt like it was kind of trending that same way this week. And they just decided to make him inactive and get somebody in there who could actually play. And, it's just, I mean, and when I say actually play, I mean from a health standpoint.
Okay,
like
thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. Like I think
we know what he meant, Nate.
It sounds like he has a high ankle sprain without them saying it's a high ankle sprain because there's, a regular twisted ankle or whatever should not have taken this long to heal. So it's probably worse than anything we've heard publicly. But I think in reality, it reminds me a lot of the Le'Veon Bell signing in Kansas City. Like, is Leonard Fournette's on the open market? Are the Buccaneers not going to say like he's better than whoever their, LaShawn McCoy or whoever their second running back is? Of course he is. Even if they love Ronald Jones, and they said it from the start, Ronald Jones is our starter, 20 is our guy, and they haven't done anything to disprove that. I mean, the game where Fournette went off, he did a lot of it late in the game, and on a especially like one really big long touchdown run there. But he makes their team better when he's healthy. Like, he's better than LaShawn McCoy. He's better than whoever else that was there before LaShawn McCoy. And so from a football standpoint, the Buccaneers look at it like they're looking, they're trying to win a Super Bowl this year. They feel like they bring in Tom Brady with the receivers they've got. They have a chance. They got a great defense. Mm-hmm. And does he make their football team better? Yes. Is he going to take over the starting job? Like, there hasn't been any indication to me that it's going to happen. But at the same time, like from my fantasy teams, I don't want Ronald Jones on my team because it's just not I don't think either one of them are that good.
Yeah, I don't want, and my stance largely hasn't changed. I don't want either of these players. Nate knows I've been Nate and I agree on a lot, and we agree on a lot often. But I am staunchly on the opposite side of his Leonard Fournette fandom. So not a lot has changed for me. I will say Leonard Fournette still stinks. Ronald Jones, a little bit, a slight boost off of a pair of touchdowns. He looked pretty good last week. Not, again, I'm 100% with Brad as well. Not a player that I am happy to roster. If I fell into him and it just so happened to work out that he is someone that I'm riding with this season, so be it. But not a player that I was actively, overextending myself for. But has surprised in touches. And Nate, I can't say the same thing at all about your guy Lenny. I'm sorry.
I mean, but you just
we can move on.
You're
we don't have to talk about
you're so cavalier with the word stinks. You
stinks.
so like
Lenny stinks.
He doesn't stink. He hasn't been healthy. Listen, man, it's a new offense.
Stinks at staying healthy.
Shows up, stinks at staying healthy. Okay, that might be true. Listen, just for clarification, after week 6, Ronald Jones is the RB13. In fantasy points per game. So he did have a monster game. He did have
Very good game.
2 touchdowns. Listen,
which is why we're gonna slide the Jones scale, Nate. We're gonna slide that up, and we're gonna keep Fournette.
I think that Jones scale needs to be recalibrated. Listen, once Leonard Fournette comes back, you'll all see. Let's talk about Derrick Henry, Brad. Derrick Henry is a monster. I have something I want to admit. Once in a dynasty league, I traded Derrick Henry for a basically half-baked Rob Gronkowski, and I regret it every day. I wake up every day, and I look at this picture of my family on the wall. I think about the good times that we had on vacation, and then I think about this horrific, just absolutely dog shit trade that I made when Rob Gronkowski completely flopped. And what's really funny is I later cut Gronkowski because he retired, and then that same owner picked up Gronkowski in free agency, and he has Gronk and Derrick Henry. Damn it. Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I understand. Like, okay, so I'm very nervous about Derrick Henry. Obviously, when he's on the field, he is a monster. And so far, he's basically been on the field his whole career. Other than late last season, he was banged up a little bit and missed the fantasy playoffs, which I know hurt some teams. But he had over 400 touches last year if you count the playoffs. That is just an insane workload. 300 touches is a big workload. 400 touches is insane, especially when it's the kind of touches that he gets. It's constant pounding, never looking to avoid contact, can't avoid contact because of the kind of runner he is. Yep. He just runs over guys. And at some point, like, there's just no way he's not going to break down. He is a big physical specimen. He's fast. Like, when he gets in the open field, it's fun to watch him run because the guys that it's like, it reminds me of Andy Reid with the pump, pass, and kick, where, he's like a head and shoulders taller than every other 13-year-old on the video. That's Derrick Henry running in the secondary. Like, the defensive backs trying to tackle him, it's just laughable most of the time. But he just lost his left tackle, Taylor Lewan. Sounded like he tore his ACL, out for the year. He's almost 27 years old. If I'm not competing this year, I am doing everything I can to sell him even before his next game, because I'm afraid that at some point there is going to be a breakdown. And when the breakdown comes, it's going to be quick and it's going to be hard and it's going to be long lasting, because it's just a lot of wear and tear on that body. And, maybe a contending team has Saquon and give me Saquon Barkley and a draft pick and I'll give you Derrick Henry. Like, I would be happy to do that if I'm not competing this year, because I am really nervous that at some point it's going to be like a Devontae Freeman type collapse where he's been really good, a lot of volume, and then all of a sudden it's just complete tank job, completely worthless in fantasy, and you are left there, holding it in your hand.
Nate, I imagine you may or may not have your rankings pulled up or the player profile rankings, but if I'm curious where you would rank Derrick Henry dynasty wise. Is he around that RB 15 area? Are you putting almost all the rookie backs over him, the Dobbins of the world, the Swifts, obviously Edwards Helaire, of course, Akers, or is he more maybe towards the bottom of it? Is he RB 20? Is he, I'm curious kind of temperature check wise here, where, again, coming off this monster Sunday, which we know he certainly has that in him. But to Brad's point, man, the Titans are so content just riding him to the ground. How long can you sustain this kind of, dominance?
If anybody was ever built for these kind of carries, he would seem like the guy. Yeah. I think there's a lot of running backs that I prefer to him. He's one of the older productive backs at this point. He's almost 27 years old, and that has to be taken into account. Of course, to Brad's point, all the volume has to be taken into account. And even more than all of this, we need to take into account the fact that he's not really a pass catcher. That's always been this thing. It's one of those things where when the running game starts to kind of fade a little bit, you can become reliant on the pass. He doesn't really have that versatility, and he doesn't have that, a loud volume essentially in that offense. It's not like Leonard Fournette, who in Jacksonville was struggling to run at times, but became an outlet in the passing game, right? Like, that just doesn't exist for Derrick Henry. So to that point, like, I kind of agree with Brad that, look, he's on top of the world right now. If you can sell him, absolutely sell him. If there's any way you can get Saquon Barkley for Derrick Henry, like, I'm hitting auto accept, like my fingers going through the keyboard, through the desk, through the drywall, outside of the house. Like, I'm falling out of the house, like trying to accept that trade. I'm doing it. There's just no hesitation. But as far as the rankings, yeah, I think he probably sits, RB 13, RB 14, maybe. To be fair, because like when you think about all these running backs, we all agree, McCaffrey, Taylor, Elliott, Saquon, Cook, Jacobs, Aaron Jones. Look, Aaron Jones hasn't signed an extension, but I think the three of us probably agree we prefer Aaron Jones, even though he's 26 now, right? Brad, are you an Aaron Jones?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. So
yeah.
The dividing line, here's a question for you. Joe Mixon has scored 15 touchdowns in like 52 games. Brad, Joe Mixon or Derrick Henry?
If I'm doing a startup draft, I'm going to take Mixon. And primary reason, they just signed him to extension. Like, he's now got a quarterback there that they're going to build around. They need some massive help O-line wise, and he's still fantasy relevant with one of the worst offensive lines probably in NFL history. Like Joe Burrow is running for his life, chucking the ball and ducking legitimately. Like you're starting to see him flinch a little bit. And that's the line that Mixon's running behind right now. And he still was able to put out a 3-touchdown game or whatever. And there's the talent is unquestionably better. It's, overall, like pass catching, everything. They need to get Gio Bernard out of town so that he can stop stealing these meaningless touches. But it's, if you want to win this year, like if you're trying to win in the first year of a dynasty startup, I could understand drafting Henry ahead of him at that point. But if I'm looking like, long term, I'm going to try to build my team middle of the pack and make myself good long term, and maybe I'll get lucky and compete early on, then I'm taking Mixon. I'm definitely taking, Swift, Dobbins, Edwards Helaire, all those guys over Henry. Maybe even Kareem Hunt. Like that to me is kind of where it gets to be a question, because if Kareem Hunt hadn't re-signed an extension in Cleveland, I would be way higher on him if he was going to be a free agent. The fact that he's going to be back there and still competing with Nick Chubb, whereas you definitely know Derrick Henry got a 4-year extension in Tennessee, and he's not competing for touches with anybody except for, the receivers. So I just don't see him lasting all 4 years of that deal. Like physically, he's, I said he had over 400 touches last year, and his pace right now is higher than it was last year. And they're a good team. Like there's no way you can't see them going deep into the playoffs again. And if he does it again, like how in the world is he going to come back from 800 plus touches over a 2-year span? I see it being a fast collapse, and I want to get out from under it before I, get no value from him.
Yeah, I don't know what to say, man. I think Derrick Henry seems like the type of guy that's built to do this. But again, Derrick Henry was the RB5 last year. I mean, he smashed his way to the top. He's been good the past couple years thus far. This year, what Derrick Henry finds himself as the RB5 currently. Again, the biggest concern for me with Derrick Henry, even more so than the injuries, is the passing game usage. And it will continue to be. And I think for a lot of people, that is what it has been. And Brad, speaking of passing game usage and concerns and red flags or white flags or flares or whatever the fuck it is people do to alert people that there's a problem, Juju Smith-Schuster.
We have a problem.
Now listen, I'm going to hint at something, okay? I'm currently writing an article on Patreon, patreon.com/I'm outraged. It may or may not have something to do with Juju Smith-Schuster. I may not be as low on him as everyone else. Brad, there's a button right in front of you. It's a big red mushroom button. You hit it, alarms are going to go off. Are you going to hit that button? Are you panicking on Juju?
I honestly probably hit it like 3 weeks ago. And I think we're to the point now where he's proven he can't be a number one, or they're not going to use him as a number one. And at that point, literally the only positive that I can see right now, he's super young. He's younger than Deontay Johnson, which is unbelievable that he's entering free agency, the same year that Johnson's about to finish up his second year. But he has to go to the perfect situation. He needs to go to a team that already has an alpha. If he goes, I don't know, I don't even know, cap situations, whatever. If he went to Kansas City and replaced Sammy Watkins in that offense and became the X opposite Tyreek Hill, where Travis Kelce's there, or if he goes to Arizona opposite DeAndre Hopkins, if he goes somewhere where there's an established one, go to Chicago and be opposite Allen Robinson if he resigns there, then there's an opportunity for me to see him potentially get back to the 1,000+ yard season. I don't know that we're ever going to see 1,400 yards again out of him, because that just felt like, Ben was just refusing to hand the ball off that year. He was going to throw the ball all over the place. And that was the perfect scenario because Antonio Brown was balling out too. That's what it takes for Juju to get to a ceiling again. And I had him in a dynasty league, and I asked you about like all these different trade offers. There's one owner that was high on him still, and I eventually pulled the trigger because I needed help this year. I had Michael Thomas on my team; he's been hurt, and now obviously in bad graces with the team. It seems like there's multiple other guys. I had McCaffrey, I had Barkley on this team. Like it was an amazing dynasty team, and I've just been crushed by injuries, and so I had to get somebody that was actually productive on the field. I traded Juju and a third for Allen Robinson in a second. And I realized like that is a serious win now move. But that's when I had this team, that's what I had to go do because Juju, I couldn't play Juju. Like, and then he goes out, I mean, last week, 2 catches, 6 yards. Like, that's not even usage. Like Travis Fulgham is way better than Juju at this point. And it's like, it's just hard to imagine that the fall could have been this steep because we knew last year, like the quarterback situation was a mess and you could easily, blame his season on that. But now you can't say that. Big Ben's come out and he's playing really well. The team is playing really well. They're in a lot of great game scripts and they're not shying away from throwing the ball. It's not like Connor's getting 25, 30 carries a game. And he's just nowhere. Like Chase Claypool is taking over. James Washington's even doing better than Juju in a lot of, in certain games anyways. And Washington's going to be obsolete as soon as Deontay Johnson comes back, which it sounds like it's going to be this week. So I think Deontay's still the number one there when he's back. He was so good in those first 2 games. It's hard to imagine that he's not going to be getting a lot of targets when he comes back. But I think Claypool's about to pass him if he hasn't already. And it'll be really interesting to see who is the number 2 receiver when they come onto the field on Sunday. Because if it's Chase Claypool and Juju's sitting on the side, or maybe they're putting him in the slot on, passing downs or whatever, that might be the best thing for him to kind of wake him up a little bit and see if they can light a fire under him, because I don't believe Mike Tomlin's the kind of guy who will make his football team worse to spite a guy. And, all the offseason talk with the contract and no extension, all this stuff. And I realized there was some bad blood there, but I don't feel like Tomlin's going to let that stand in the way of him and, a potential AFC playoff run, Super Bowl run, whatever, because they have a team that can do it right now. And as soon as Big Ben's gone, whether that's next year, the year after, if you're starting over at quarterback, like that, you may never get there again in his coaching tenure. And so I feel like this is his one chance. And this is how often they're going to Juju. It makes me nervous that he's not as good as we thought he was.
He feels like an afterthought, Nato, man. And I know it hurts me to say that as much as it probably hurts you to hear it. And I'm going to add one more thing because I think Brad covered all the bases as he always does, very thorough. The great Adam Levitan, Nato, tweeted out after the game on Sunday, said Juju has just one game, one single outing, one single contest, over 84 yards since Antonio Brown left Pittsburgh. That's when I read that through. I read it through. I closed my Twitter app. I restarted my phone. I opened the app back up. I scrolled down. I found that tweet again. I read it again. I showed my girlfriend. I said, babe, do you believe this? She said, stop talking about Juju. Nate, this is bad, buddy. This is again, I know it's probably not you pressing the button, but for those that are pressing the button and trying to figure it out and make moves, man, it's getting dark quick, especially with, and I don't want to steal the Chase Claypool thunder to close the show here, but it's getting dark, especially with Claypool's arrival.
I think a guy that's 24 years old, not even 24 years old, who had a 900+ yard rookie season, 1,400 yards in that second year. And I remember distinctly, a time when a player named Amari Cooper was a flop in Oakland, when it wasn't working, when he had 2 consecutive games in Oakland with just 1 target. It was over for Amari Cooper. They didn't want him. He was a bust. He wasn't trying. It wasn't going to work out. And then shocker, Amari Cooper goes to his next destination and torches everything all over again. The question is, are we betting on talent or are we betting on a situation that's collapsed on Juju? The opportunity is not there. And you can say that, it's because he's not playing well enough. He's still leading the team in snaps. So the opportunity hasn't been there. Juju has that resume. He's not 24 years old. I've seen this before. If people are this low on Juju, I'm reaching out. I'm going to buy him where I can for cheap because clearly, people are undervaluing the previous resume and what he's done. And again, Ryan, you should know this. You remember those Amari Cooper days. It felt like it was over for Amari Cooper.
Really
and then he went to Dallas.
It really did.
And suddenly, boom, top 10 dynasty asset all over again. And whether Claypool is ascending or not in this offense, he clearly looks like the guy. I believe in Deontay Johnson. All I'm saying is, and Brad, feel free to add in anything you want here. I think that Juju Smith-Schuster has a lot left in the tank. And as I tweeted before, if Juju was playing with Deshaun Watson now, this wouldn't even be coming up. This would not be coming up. If he ends up in Houston, I can see a ton of success. But right now, it's not in his favor with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And there's nothing we can do about it as fantasy owners. We can't start him. What are you going to do?
Answer me this. Do you think there's a chance that they trade him this year?
For sure.
To try to get something
100%.
from him? Because, I mean, they're undefeated. They've got a legit playoff team. And you're trading a huge name away at that point. That, to me, it makes sense, but it's also risky because if Deontay Johnson is having trouble staying healthy, you're down to Chase Claypool and James Washington at that point if you trade him away. So just from a depth standpoint, I think I could see them keeping him, but also they're going to lose him for nothing if that happens. Maybe a compensation pick or something, but I don't know. It makes me. I think we're going to find out here in the next 2 or 3 weeks what they really think of him, because prior to the trade deadline, if they get rid of him, then they've completely given up. And to me, the problem with the Amari Cooper comparison is very interesting because Cooper basically proved when he got to Dallas that he needed external motivation to be successful. He needed a change of scenery. He couldn't go out and do it with Derek Carr, even though he'd done it with Derek Carr before. He couldn't go out and do it on a week in, week out basis. He wasn't, it reminded me, did you all see the Stephon Diggs play last night where, granted they were down 2 scores, but he was like walking back to the line and they got called for a false start because it was under 2 minutes and he wasn't set. Like he didn't get set prior to the play because it looked like he just didn't care. Like that makes me nervous about a player long term. Like he needs external motivation. If things aren't going well, he's going to sit and pout, and that's what it feels like potentially with Juju right now. Because if it was obviously the case with Amari Cooper in Oakland, he goes to Dallas, gets fresh life, gets Dak Prescott as his quarterback. All of a sudden, he's like having 3 touchdown games right and left, and then he starts to he's been there a couple of years. He's got some contract people talking about them getting out of his contract after this year and stuff. And maybe, he's, he had some good games, but this last week with Andy Dalton at quarterback, he was completely non-existent until the fourth quarter when the game was completely out of hand. And all of a sudden he got like 3 or 4 catches on the last drive, got a touchdown, saved his fantasy day. That's the kind of external motivation that I'm afraid Juju needs. And if so, I feel like there's a lot of teams that'll be fine with that, but there's a lot of teams that won't. And granted, they're going to know. They're going to be able to reach out to teammates, have their players reach out to these guys and say, look, like, what's Juju like when he's practicing? Because you watch him in the game and like the talent's not showing up. We know he's way more talented than what he's putting out there. Is he giving up? And if that's the case, there's going to be a lot of teams that want nothing to do with him.
I've never heard a bad thing about Juju. And in fact, Juju seems like one of the most charismatic players in the league. I mean, he would be the heart of a city in most like any other organization. And even in Pittsburgh, I mean, this guy, like you can go check out his YouTube stuff. I mean, they love him in Pittsburgh. It's a very odd situation. I don't know what the basis of it is. We know what happened last year. They've added so many extra weapons in this offense. His role just hasn't been what it was in the past, and he's really disappeared sort of in the target share funnel of this offense. I think that he does get traded. Like, to me, he feels like one of the prime guys at the point in time when the trade deadline comes up. If this is exactly what we're seeing in the future, then he absolutely feels like the type of guy to get traded. And, at this point in his contract, that's expiring, I don't know what his value is. I don't know if they can get a 3rd or a 4th for him. I don't know if that's too much. I mean, especially if it continues with this trend. But
feels like a steal,
he's way too good, way too young. I mean, nobody, literally nobody, even the people that are the most down on Juju, nobody believes that there's not a chance he goes somewhere else and plays successful. Nobody believes that. We know he's that good. And at one point, this guy was a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. I mean, that was just 2 years ago? That this guy was up at the top. People were saying, oh my God, look, he's playing with Antonio Brown, but he's 22 years old. He's destroying the league. And then suddenly, last year we have those issues. Big Ben's gone. This year there's a lot of other weapons. and it hasn't manifested, and everybody has just quit on Juju. But I haven't really seen the reason for it myself. That's all I'm saying. I just have not seen it, Brad. So with that being said,
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Like, I just wish it translated onto the field, because it feels like there's a ton of opportunity for success for dynamic wide receivers in Pittsburgh right now. Like, Claypool's coming out of nowhere and doing this, and Deontay Johnson, when he's getting the opportunity, getting targets right and left. And even, I mean, week 1, Juju went out and had a good game, and they were like, okay, he's back. You know, he just needed Big Ben, healthy, whatever. And he's just vanished since then. And it just, you know, maybe he's a little banged up. And, you know, I know he missed some practices. They keep saying a knee. Like, you got to think there might be something there, because, you know, you don't normally rest a 23-year-old, you know, midweek. And so maybe there is something to that. And he's not able to get in and out of breaks like he can when he's healthy. I don't know, but it just feels like there's something else there, because, like you said, I haven't heard anything bad about him. I just am nervous about the Amari Cooper comparison, because I've heard a lot of stuff about Amari Cooper that makes me like not want him on my team.
For sure. I don't blame you, Brad. Listen, I think that was a lot deeper of a topic to go out on. I did not expect the show to end on this note.
Bit melancholy.
Yeah, it did. It softened up a lot here. I'm not quitting on Juju Smith-Schuster. Cat's Out of the Bag, my article is going to definitely be about Juju Smith-Schuster and all the reasons why I'm buying. Brad, thank you for coming on, man. I don't know if we went a lot longer than you expected. I
listen to your show every week, man. Like, I'm up for anything.
I always appreciate your time, man. Fun having you. We're going to get you on Sonic Truth. Ryan, you have anything you want to plug? You want to plug people in on this Friday show?
Yeah, we Kelly drags me by the ear every Friday, 5:00. Makes me pour a beverage. It's terrible. No, it's a blast, guys. We do Monkey Knife Fight, monkeyknifefight.com, promo code Underworld. Get you some money to play with us. Throw out some prop bets. We have a drink. We laugh for an hour. We giggle. We have fun. So the Propcast Happy Hour every Friday during the season. Mr. Matt Kelly and I, 5:00 Eastern. It's a good time. Join us. Win money.
Love it, man. Well, we'll be back next week with an unidentified guest, but I'm sure we will.
TBD.
Yeah, TBD. We'll definitely let everybody know once we lock someone down. We'll see you guys next week.